Well, good evening, everyone. It is Friday evening here. Wanted to get on and do an update video regarding the possible severe weather that we'll likely see for much of tomorrow. So that would be Saturday, December 9th. Does look like we will have an area mainly across the deep south in the Mississippi Valley where we will see some severe storms. Likely not an outbreak. There are some questions with this system. Not the most intense, but could see a couple tornadoes, some damaging winds, and maybe even some hail. So what I want to do here is start with our Storm Prediction Center outlook. So right here, this is our categorical outlook. So we've got this yellow area right here across the Mississippi Valley. This is a level 2 out of 5 slight risk for our, again, Saturday period. Southern Arkansas, northern Louisiana, kind of that northern half of Mississippi, western Tennessee, maybe a little bit of Kentucky and Alabama as well. This is likely going to be our focal point here. We're going to have a cold front kind of draped this way, pushing south-southeast throughout the day. That's going to be kind of our triggering event for those storms. When we look at the tornado threat, we do have a 5% that is out for really that same area where that slight risk is issued. So again, 5% tornado risk, certainly not nothing, not an outbreak or anything, but could see a couple tornadoes that do occur here, mainly Saturday afternoon into the evening and overnight hours across this area. We also will have the threat along that cold front for some damaging winds with some of those stronger storm kind of line segments and squall lines. So if storms do kind of line up along the cold front, we'll have to watch for that. And early on in the storm cycle, we may see a little bit of some of those stronger storms with a little bit of hail. So there is an outline here for hail as well. But again, 2 out of 5 slight risk for this area. And this will push into the overnight hours off to the east-southeast. So do want to take a look at kind of what's causing this. In general, we have this big trough that's setting up here in that jet stream far up above the surface. And that's going to be our triggering event for severe weather. So if we move forward in time here, you can see this trough that's setting up right here. And so this is kind of our jet stream here. It's digging down through the Four Corners, Colorado area. And you can see that here. These kind of lighter colors, the red, almost purplish, and yellow, that's some enhanced flow. And so this trough right here is what's triggering our severe weather for tomorrow. Now, one thing that we want to note is as we move forward in time here, let me go to about, this would be 3 p.m. tomorrow. So 3 p.m. Saturday afternoon. One thing that's worth noting here is we would call this a positively tilted trough right here. Really what that means is typically a positive tilted trough, one that kind of has this axis that tilts down and to the left, typically doesn't have quite the same favorability for significant severe weather. Typically, you want to see a negatively tilted trough. So you want to see kind of this lower part down over here, and then a lot of that flow kind of here on the backside. And that's not what we have this time around. When we do have that negative tilt, it encourages more moisture being pulled up, stronger low-level winds at the surface, and that's why we typically can see more significant severe weather. So again, not ideal for the significant severe weather, and that's why, again, certainly still will have some, but likely not a significant tornado event or anything like that due to the positive nature and the kind of the current direction and shape of this trough that we're going to have here. So now when we jump into the actual kind of look here of the storm system, again, looking across the deep south, this is our moisture right here. And so we are going to have adequate moisture that's going to be in place. So again, this would be by about 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon. We're going to have 60s dew points all the way up into Tennessee, certainly more than enough moisture across Mississippi, southern Louisiana, Alabama, and parts of Georgia as well. So we would call this area right here is going to be our cold front, kind of draped right along here. This is kind of a warm front that's draped here. So this would be our warm sector across Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama mainly. And again, kind of mid 60s dew points here, low 60s up in Tennessee, but more than enough moisture that's going to be pulled north. And we can see here that as we go through the overnight hours tonight, that moisture really is still off the coast here. And as we move forward in time, it does get pulled a little bit further north into those kind of prime severe weather areas that we've talked about. And so we're going to have enough moisture. That's not a concern. When we look at, let's see here. When we look at obviously our instability, that's one thing that we do want to take a look at typically. So to kind of see, is there enough juice in the atmosphere for storms? So as we move forward in time here, again, this will be about midday. We can see some of these green colors right along the Mississippi River. Likely that's where some of the initial storms will fire is kind of southeast Arkansas, western Mississippi here. As we move forward in time to kind of mid-afternoon, I think we're going to see some storms up in Tennessee. Not as much instability up further north, but we will have a little bit better wind shear. Whereas down in southern part here across Louisiana and Mississippi, probably not as much of wind shear, but we will have more of that instability, a little bit more unstable atmosphere down here. Now, one thing that we always want to take a look at here is, again, as I highlighted a minute ago, our cold front is going to be across kind of Tennessee, Mississippi, into southern Arkansas here. One thing that we want to look at for the type of storms that we're likely to see is what is the orientation of our wind near that cold front. And so, if we were looking for isolated supercells, a significant tornado threat, we would want to see our cold front here and the general direction of the winds be perpendicular to that cold front. So, that's going to mean that you kind of see the winds hit the cold front, and that can help to really ignite and trigger those storms. They'll move off the cold front and typically stay more isolated rather than congealing into a big line. And what we're going to see tomorrow is that, again, cold front being right here, and look at these wind barbs here in black. We have our kind of normal direction being basically parallel to our approaching cold front. So again, what that's going to tend to do is not have very many isolated storms, and we're going to see the storms form and then quickly kind of form a big squall line. That doesn't mean that there's not a severe weather threat with that or not a tornado threat, but it does tend to lessen that overall severe weather threat, especially the tornado threat, when you have those squall lines. Now, you can have some embedded circulations. We may have some of that tomorrow, but we won't have those isolated storms that can feed off the atmosphere and produce significant tornadoes in all likelihood. So that is certainly one thing that we're watching tomorrow. When we look at the simulated reflectivity and kind of that example radar here, let me back this up in time. One thing worth noting, it does look like overnight we may have something here across kind of southeastern Oklahoma, western Arkansas here. As we move forward in time, we're going to see that this is going to be a couple significant storms here late tonight or early morning Saturday. Then, as we move forward throughout the day, that's when we'll see a little bit of a reprieve in the morning. Sorry. And then, as we move forward in time and we get to around the lunch hour here, this would be around lunch hour, we'll start to see storms early afternoon picking up in intensity. And then by this would be 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, it does look like the western portion of Tennessee, the northern portion of Mississippi here is going to have possibly, at least early on, some isolated storms. So we could see a couple tornadoes certainly possible here in these early storms. And then as we move forward in time, likely going to see, again, kind of these maybe a couple different lines develop here. And again, because of the nature of those winds, we'll typically see these storms pop up and then kind of congeal into that line, which may limit some of that significant tornado threat. But again, I think we will see a couple of stronger storms kind of embedded within that line. And certainly those would pose a tornado threat. So overall, again, definitely the possibility of severe weather with our slight risk here across the Deep South and Mississippi Valley. Probably not a significant severe weather event, not a significant tornado threat. But if you do live in these areas, definitely do want to pay attention for really your Saturday afternoon and evening. But again, sadly, I think it's probably too marginal, too far away for someone like myself here in Dallas. I was planning to use it as a Saturday and take off and head that way for chasing. But unless something changes this evening, I don't think it's probably worth the 8.5 hour drive that it would be. So again, hopefully this update was helpful if you live in those areas and keeping you weather aware here as we enter certainly into December. And doesn't mean that everything becomes quiet. It's definitely a lot less frequent, but we do get some of these storm systems in the Deep South that can certainly cause severe weather. So hope everybody has a good weekend, and I'll see you back for the next video.